and consumer news. We've got a packed show for you. For the next hour, we're broadcasting from Blackpool, the latest instalment of GBNews North West Week from this iconic Lancashire seaside resort. We got so much to talk about. It's a big day for the economy and the pound in your pocket. We'll be discussing those energy price rises, that Bank of England interest rate increase, the cost of living more generally, and also responding nationally and locally, testing the mood to that levelling up white paper announced in the House of Commons yesterday. All that and more on The Money with me, Liam Halligan, after GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 1. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The cost of living is set to soar for millions of households across the UK as regulator Ofgem has announced a 54% rise in the energy price cap. Those on default tariffs paying by direct debit will see their bills increase by £693 to almost £2,000. And repayment customers face an increase of £708. The change will be introduced from April the 1st, affecting around 22 million customers. Chancellor Rishi Sunak says he'll introduce measures giving households in council tax bands A to D an extra £350 to ease the burden.
It is not sustainable to keep holding the price of energy artificially low. For me to stand here and pretend we don't have to adjust to paying higher prices would be wrong and dishonest. But what we can do is take the sting out of a significant price shock for millions of families by making sure the increase in prices is smaller initially and spread over a longer period.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves accused the government of forcing households to load up their credit cards.
And the uncomfortable truth for the Chancellor is that even after what he has announced today, families in Britain will be still paying hundreds of pounds more for their energy, including some of the poorest families, from April. But what does the government offer? A buy now, pay later scheme that loads up costs for tomorrow. High prices as far as the eye can see. This year, next year and the year after that. Give with one hand now and take it all back later.
Meanwhile, energy giant Shell has managed to capitalise on the soaring gas and oil prices. The company recorded a pre-tax profit of £12 billion in the last 3 months of 2021. That's up from almost £900 million in the previous quarter. Shell now plans to return £6.3 billion to investors by buying back their shares. People are also facing higher mortgages. That's following a rise in interest rates. The Bank of England raised rates to 0.5% in a bid to curb inflation and signalled more hikes are on the way. It marks the central bank's first back-to-back increase since June 2004. Scottish Championship club Raith Rovers have apologised and announced they'll look to cancel Davy Goodwilly's contract. They said in a statement that they'd focused far too much on football matters and not enough on morals. The striker was found to have raped a woman by a civil court in 2017 and ordered to pay damages, but he's never faced criminal charges. Russia has criticised US plans to send more troops to Eastern Europe, describing the move as destructive. President Joe Biden has ordered nearly 3,000 military personnel to Poland and Romania to bolster NATO defences. Moscow has denied plans to invade Ukraine, but it's understood Russia's now mobilised 115,000 troops on its border. Former UK Ambassador Sir Mark Lyle Grant told GB News that the troop deployment is a symbolic measure.
They will defend NATO allies militarily if required. So it's more a signal to President Putin of America's commitment to European security. We're on something of a knife edge at the moment, and we're entering a very dangerous period.
The London Mayor has called for urgent action after toxic air pollution was found at every hospital and medical centre in the capital. Analysis shows the air quality meets the legal UK limits but fails the stricter World Health Organisation guidelines. Sadiq Khan described the situation as unacceptable and vowed to take steps to tackle the problem. The government's being urged to set a clear date in law to ban the sale of new gas boilers. 29 million homes will need new low-carbon heating systems in order to reach 2050 climate goals. The Business, Energy and Industry Committee says the government's approach lacks clear direction and current policies are not enough. Researchers at Bristol University have developed flying robots the size of insects with flapping wings. Known as micro-air vehicles, they're better than other drones at manoeuvring in tight spaces and resisting air turbulence. The new technology can be used for search and rescue and dangerous environments like collapsed buildings. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's return to On the Money with Liam.
And welcome to On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news with me, Liam Halligan. I'm delighted to be broadcasting from Blackpool today on the Lancashire coast, the iconic seaside resort. This is the famous bar of the Imperial Hotel, built all the way back in 1867. We're talking the cost of living today. We're talking about energy prices as that Ofgem energy price cap is raised by nearly 54%. Almost a £700 increase in average household energy bills. That affects 22 million households. We're talking the Bank of England's interest rate rise to 0.5%, again affecting millions of households who have a standard variable mortgage. We've got a panel of guests gauging local opinion on these changes. We've got Bradley Harris, the GB News Northwest correspondent, running around town telling us what's going on. We'll be joined by the CEO of Quadrilla, the oil and gas company, talking about that local coal mine up in Cumbria and also fracking here in the Northwest, a very contentious issue. Email us with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet @GBNews. What do you think about the cost of living crisis and how it's affecting you? This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and from Blackpool as part of Northwest Week, you're on the money. Now, here at GB News, we pride ourselves on our local and our regional reporting. As we said when we launched, if it matters to you, it matters to us. That's why we report from local towns and local communities. Before Christmas, we had GB News Northern Ireland Week. I joined Dougie Beattie, our Northern Ireland correspondent, as we presented our shows from Belfast and then from Fermanagh, near the border with the Republic of Ireland, and then up on the north coast of Northern Ireland in the resort of Coleraine. And this is GB News Northwest Week. On Tuesday, I presented On the Money from the Cheshire market town of Macclesfield. Yesterday, we moved into Lancashire, to Burnley, the former mill town that's reinvented itself as an aerospace hub and suffered during lockdown. Today, we're in Blackpool, not just with On the Money, but also from 3 p.m, the briefing with our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, and then 7 p.m. tonight, it's Nigel Farage from this seat here in the Imperial Bar in Blackpool. A huge amount is happening on the cost of living today. It's really worth listening and learning what is actually happening to affect the pound in your pocket. We've got these interest rate rises, haven't we, that will affect people's mortgage payments. We've also got this increase in fuel bills. And just before we start the discussion, let's have a little look at them. Ofgem, the energy regulator, announced today that the energy price cap will go up from where it's been since October, £1,277. The new cap from April will be £1,970. That's a 54% increase, and that's going to affect 22 million households across the country who are on the standard variable tariff. Chancellor Rishi Sunak stood up in the Commons this lunchtime, and he said He was going to award a £200 rebate across the board, but only from October, to soften the blow of those higher energy price rises. That's not a grant to households. It's almost like a soft loan to energy companies, which they will pass on, but you'll pay for that in your future bills. There'll also be a £150 discount. That is a rebate, a grant on council tax from April for bands A to D. So Sunak is targeting the assistance on lower income households on lower rates of council tax. Also, the Warms Homes discount will be extended to 3 million people. That's means-tested assistance to help with your heating bills for the lowest income and most vulnerable households. On top of that, we've had this interest rate rise. It was expected, but it's still a shock, if you know. It's 0.5% now, up from 0.25%. That will impact households with variable rate mortgages and those who take on more personal debt over the coming weeks and months as they struggle to make ends meet. And that's your On the Money question today. From Blackpool, as part of North West Week, the UK's cost of living crisis. Is the government doing enough? Now, before we get local reaction from here in Blackpool, of course, this cost of living crisis, it isn't just in the north of England. It isn't just in those former Labour red wall seats that are the subject of such political speculation, because if the Prime Minister doesn't win them back, as he did in 2019, he loses his majority. There's an awful lot of people struggling to make ends meet in the southeast of England too, and also in the capital. And I'm joined by Paul Hawkins. Paul, great to see you. You're outside a supermarket in central London. What is the mood among shoppers, given the announcement we've just had from the Bank of England and also from Ofgem? It's like a double whammy.
Yeah, good afternoon, Liam. It's absolutely right. It is a double whammy. I mean, you've just been through the long list, household bills, energy bills, shopping costs. There's tax rises on the way. We've had another interest rate today. So if you're a homeowner, that's going to go up. Equally, even if you rent and the property that you rent has a mortgage, then the landlord will be mindful to put up the rent to cover his mortgage. So costs for everyone, everywhere, are going up. At places like that behind me, household bills, the average annual grocery bill, this is according to Kantar, up by £180. Now, in the 4 weeks to the 23rd of January, that's up 3.8% on the same time last year. So shopping is a lot more expensive now. You may have seen adverts on the TV, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Morrison's, Asda, etc. Lots of them trying to price match the lower end supermarkets when it comes to prices, price matching places like Aldi. That's going to be a big area for the supermarkets to fight over the coming year. And then you were asking the big question, is the government doing enough? Well, you've got this £150 rebate on council tax bills for bands A to D. That's only in England. There's a national insurance rise on the way in April of £200, so you're down 50 quid. That's £200 for the average person, for the average wage in Britain, which is around about 30 grand. So an extra £200 they'll be paying in national insurance will offset that £150 rebate they're going to get in October anyway. And by the way, council tax, of course, only applying to England. For Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, the Chancellor announcing help for those parts of the country, £565 million package to be distributed amongst those countries in the UK. But yeah, really big problems for everyone. It's not just those who are most vulnerable, not just those on the lowest incomes. Everyone is going to be affected by these big price rises.
Paul, as you've explained there, as I tried to explain at the top of the show, this really is a complex set of policy proposals. The council tax reduction only applies in England, as you say. The whole package only applies in England, Scotland and Wales. Northern Ireland has devolved responsibility for energy policy. Rishi Sunak was at pains to explain that under the so-called Barnett formula, which moves money around the United Kingdom, particularly to Scotland, there will be transfers. But what really struck me here, Paul, is that this is not just about helping the poorest and the most vulnerable households with that Warms Home discount extension. There are many families who would consider themselves comfortable, where you've got two adults working with pretty good jobs who are also going to be really shocked by this increase in energy bills, in their borrowing costs, in this cost of living squeeze.
You're absolutely right, Liam. And in fact, there's a Savanta Comres poll out today. 2,000 people were polled online. A third of them, working full-time, are struggling to pay their household bills. Half had heating on less than they did this time last year. And 29% said they're now skipping meals so they can heat their home. These are people who are on full-time salaries. So when the government talks about wages going up, it doesn't matter if the cost of everything else is going up. Big problems for the government. Today, you would have to say, barely a sticking plaster, really, in the grand scheme of things.
I've got Daryl. Paul Hawkins there, GB News reporter in central London. Thank you for joining us. We're back now to here on the ground in Blackpool on the Lancashire coast. I'm delighted to be joined by Amanda Hudson. You are the director of His Provision Food Bank, a community interest group charity. You do an awful lot of work with vulnerable and lower income households here in Blackpool. It is, with the best in the world, a relatively less prosperous part of the country. What will these really large energy price increases mean to the people who use your food bank, not just at the lowest end of the income spectrum, but higher up as well?
It's reflective, isn't it? So the ripple effect of these energy prices means that everybody's going to be hit from them, from the very low income to the very high income. But our families are already struggling with the universal credit, £20 a week that was taken off them. So they're £80 short already. If you add on the other £900 a year that they've now got to find on top, yes, they're getting the £200 off, but actually they're not getting that till October. So, you know, you're looking that they're going to have to find on average about £75 extra a month, which they haven't got. You know, they've still got to feed their children, they've still got to, you know, put their children through school. You know, it's not just the energy prices that are going up, it's the cost of food as well. So it's all, you know, it's all inclusive. You know, yes, with the council tax rises as well, and we're getting the rebate. Unfortunately, yes, it's only in England, and it's £150, but actually the cost that the council tax has increased actually will be worse off as well. So it's like
doesn't even begin to eat into the £700 increase in energy bills.
It's like giving children a sweet and saying, there you go, here's your sweet, but actually I'm going to take it off you. And that's how I look at it. Let's
just talk also about the other kind of part of this lunchtime double whammy on the cost of living, that interest rate increase. Of course, much of the media will focus on, oh, if you've got a mortgage and it's on a variable rate, your outgoings will go up. That's 2.2 million households, but there are many, many more households who take on personal debt, as I'm sure you know, Amanda, from people who use your food bank. They will be impacted by higher borrowing costs too. To what extent is debt important in helping the people that you see and work with and assist every day to help them to make ends meet?
Well, the problem is that a lot of the people that we work with may not understand how to make the pound stretch. And if they do, making it stretch even further is even harder. So if you're a normal family, and what is a normal family nowadays, and both parents are working, and you've suddenly got to find more money for your mortgage, but then you may have to pay it on your car, and not only on your car, any loans that you've taken out, any home improvements, suddenly that money's got to stretch even further. You know, so food banks are already at a squeeze, but we're going to have to, all charities are going to have to find extra money for mortgages they may have, and businesses. So it's a massive, massive piece of work that's going to have to be undertaken to find out where and what we keep and what we don't keep across the whole country. And families are going to have to really understand how to manage that pound even more effectively than they were managing it before.
Amanda, I must ask you, I don't mean to be frivolous, a more political question, if I may, testing the local mood. Blackpool's traditionally had two MPs, Conservative and Labour, but the Labour MP became Conservative at the last 2019 general election in Blackpool South. To what extent do you think people in this wonderful Lancashire town feel that the Conservative Party gets it when it comes to low-income and vulnerable households in this particular part of the country. To what extent do you think levelling up is more than just a slogan?
I think what has to happen is that people need to understand what's happening in the country. And I don't think it's just in Blackpool, but in Blackpool, because we are near enough in the top 5 of everything, because we have a voice and we like to say what's going on, people think, you know, if they say it right and they're saying it and they're promoting it, that they're doing it. But you have to live it to understand it. And my question would be, how many of the MPs that we've got across the whole country have actually lived where some of the people that we're working with have lived? You know, it's all right doing it for a day or a week, but actually lived it. Have they?
Amanda, we're so grateful to you for coming on The Money. I'd really like to stay in touch. You can let me know when I go back to my studio in London, the Gilded Cage, what's actually going on here. We'll talk to you remotely in the weeks and months to come as this cost of living crisis pans out. Amanda Hudson of His Provision Food Bank and local community interest charity, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Stay with us, we're on The Money. We're talking the cost of living crisis, the lunchtime double whammy that consumers were hit with today. Higher energy prices and higher interest rates too for those with variable rate mortgages and personal debt. Stay with us. After the break, we'll be back. Here's the weather.
Hello again. A mild one again today, but things are changing. Tomorrow's going to be an awful lot colder, and that colder weather will arrive after a wet and windy spell tonight. It's all coming from a cold front, which is approaching at the moment and will later today bring some heavy rain to the Western Isles and the Highlands of Scotland. But for most of us, it's another dry day. There's a lot of cloud around, but we are seeing some breaks in the clouds, so a bit of sunshine likely, parts of East Wales, the Midlands, North East England, Eastern Scotland seeing some breaks in the cloud, and even further south we may at times see a little blue sky. But generally cloudy, dry and mild with a bit of a breeze blowing. Temperatures double digits, maybe 12, 13 degrees where we see some sunshine. But there's that rain coming into the far northwest later on. Could be quite heavy for a time, and it will start to turn to snow initially over the mountains. It pushes southwards, that rain band across into northern England, parts of Wales overnight. So an hour or two of rain, and for a short spell at least, that rain could be pretty heavy again, falling as snow over the Welsh mountains. Staying quite mild in the far southeast, but elsewhere it is going to turn colder, so it could turn icy as that band of wet weather moves through. And there is the possibility early tomorrow morning of a bit of snow over the Midlands, East Anglia, possibly parts of southern England, just for a time, not expected to last too long before that sweeps away. And then we've got sunny spells and showers. Those showers will be turning more and more wintry, initially over hills, but down to low levels from mid-morning onwards over northern England. Western parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland could also see a mixture of sleet and snow, and a much colder feel as well, especially when you add on the strength of the wind. Still that wind blowing through Friday afternoon, but easing down during Friday night, and things could then again turn icy as we keep some showers coming into the northwest, a wintry mix of showers, a chilly start to what will be a windy weekend, wet in the north on Saturday, dry in the south, showers for all of us on Sunday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan, broadcasting from Blackpool on the sunny Lancashire coast. And it is pretty sunny here today as part of GB News Northwest Week. We've been across the Northwest all week. We've gone from Macclesfield in Cheshire to Burnley yesterday. We're in Blackpool here today. Darren McCaffrey will be here from the Imperial Bar Hotel, built in 1867, iconic venue, at 3 p.m. with his briefing. Nigel Farage will join us at 7 p.m. for Farage at Large, again from Blackpool, and I might even be popping up on that show as well. But for now, we're talking the cost of living crisis this lunchtime. Not only has Ofgem, the energy regulator, increased that energy price cap for 22 million households by 54%, almost a £700 increase to almost £2,000 in annual household energy bills. And on top of that, the Bank of England has increased interest rates from 1.25 to 0.5%. That increases the outgoings for the 2.2 million UK households on standard variable rate mortgages and borrowing costs for others who take on more personal debt over the coming weeks and months. We're testing the mood here in Blackpool, and my colleague, GB News Northwest correspondent Bradley Harris, we're interrupting his lunch break. He is a bit of a skiver. He's at a fish and chip shop just down the road. Brad, get some in for me, but let's have a chat first. To what extent do you think this cost of living crisis is going to be talked about in the pubs and clubs and living rooms of Blackpool, and indeed fish and chip shops, for the rest of this day?
Absolutely, Liam. It's certainly a discussion that actually has been happening here in Bentley's fish and chip shop in Blackpool. People have been coming in, tucking into fish and chips, and honestly, cost of living has been a big topic here. I want to bring in David Bentley, if I may, who is the owner of Bentley's Fish and Chips. Come on in, just a little bit close. That's perfect. I want to chat to you. Thanks for joining us on GB News. Cost of living. It's a big deal here in Blackpool. Of course, when we see those energy prices going up, it's been all over the news today. Hundreds of pounds we're talking in terms of an increase for people. How much of an impact is that going to have for you, both personally, but also from a business point of view?
A big impact, really. It's the price increase is phenomenal from, well, just this year. The fish has gone up 40%, the oil's gone up 60% that we fry as fish and chips in. I mean, we're talking hundreds of pounds increases, and we can only absorb so much of that before we have to pass some of it on to the customer. So the customer's really going to suffer as well as we are. I mean, the staff, we keep the staff on, obviously, through the pandemic as best we could. So, yeah, it's not easy.
Of course, the pandemic has had a knock-on effect for many businesses. You've been telling me that actually fish and chip shops, including yours, has done fairly well. People have stayed in, they've spent a few bob on some chips, you know, to stay in and have a meal in. But actually, this is another punch in the gut for businesses.
Yes, definitely is a punch in the gut. I mean, the VAT going back to its normal rate, as tax, I mean, the grant scheme was phenomenal, really helped everybody out. But people are finding it hard now. We're in January, the tax bills are all coming in, and obviously it was all tax was the grants, and I bet a lot of businesses have had to use that money to keep afloat. So I don't know, I should imagine we'll find quite a few businesses, especially the small B&Bs in Blackpool, going under, you know, and struggling to pay the tax at this time of year now.
Let's talk about national insurance contributions going up in April. I can see your reaction. Go on, tell me.
Well, it's not good. It's another nail in the coffin, really, isn't it? I mean, luckily we've got a good business and a good, well, I would say a good business here, and I do all right. I've had to increase my prices this year, which is not, which I'm not happy doing, but we've got to keep ourselves afloat. The government, has put these increases up, but I don't think they've put the thought into it really for the smaller businesses that like ours, really.
What kind of support do you want to see from the government?
That's a good question. I haven't a clue. There's no real answer to it. I just don't know what the answer is. I mean, we've got a Conservative Member of Parliament in the Blackpool South, which we're in. It's the first one we've had here for years, and whether he'll get back in here or not, I very much doubt it, to be honest with you. I don't know what the government can do.
Well, look, David, it's still been interesting to hear your thoughts. Like I say, Liam, people here at Bentley's Fish and Chip Shop have been talking about the cost of living because, of course, this is going to have a huge impact for many people living here in Blackpool.
Very interesting, Brad. Bradley Harris there, GB News North West correspondent. Talking to a man who's well known in these parts, David Bentley of Bentley's famous fish and chips there here in Blackpool. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan, here on GB News as part of North West Week. We're discussing the cost of living crisis after that energy price rise this lunchtime announced by energy regulator Ofgem. We're talking about higher borrowing costs as the Bank of England raises interest rates. Much more after the break. Stay with us. You're on the money after the GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
It's 1:31. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The energy regulator Ofgem has announced a 54% rise in the price cap. Those on default tariffs paying by direct debit will see their bills increase by £693 to almost £2,000, and prepayment customers face an increase of £708. The change will introduced from April the 1st, affecting around 22 million customers. Chancellor Rishi Sunak says he'll introduce measures giving households in council tax bands A to D an extra £350 to ease the burden. Meanwhile, energy giant Shell has managed to capitalise on the soaring gas and oil prices. The company recorded a pre-tax profit of £12 billion in the last 3 months of 2021. That's up from almost £900 million in the previous quarter. The Bank of England has raised interest rates to 0.5% and signalled more hikes are on the way as it tries to curb inflation. It marks the central bank's first back-to-back increase since June 2004. GB News understands Northern Ireland's First Minister Paul Givan is planning to resign today. It comes amid increasing tensions over the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Officials were ordered to stop agri-food checks. That's potentially a breach of international law. Hauliers are calling for clarity as lorries are still being received, but it's not clear whether inspections are going ahead. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. We're back with a full update at the top of the hour. After the break, it's back to Blackpool and Liam with On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan, here on GB News, broadcasting from the bar of the Imperial Hotel in Blackpool. Built in 1867, we're here as part of GB News North West Week. Now, regular On the Money listeners and viewers will know that each day On the Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview with a business leader or policymaker with a particularly interesting perspective. And once we decided we were going to come to Blackpool, we were going to come to the Northwest, we knew this rise in the energy price cap was coming, we thought, how interesting would it be to debate the issue of fracking? That's the extraction of hydrocarbons, oil and gas from what are called tight formations underground, a kind of new technology, a new way of extracting oil and gas. It's pretty controversial, but one of the leaders in this field is a company called Quadrilla. And I'm delighted to say that my latest Money Talks interview is with Francis Egan, who's the CEO of Quadrilla. So here it is, the latest in my interview series, Money Talks. Francis Egan, very grateful to you for coming into, I'd say the On the Money studio, but it's the bar of the Imperial Hotel.
Delighted.
A rather more comfortable environment, I should say. Can I put to you, an awful lot of people, particularly on a day like today, when energy prices have gone up so much for ordinary people, the result of high wholesale gas prices and indeed oil prices. They're over $90 a barrel now, heading for triple digits again, the highest since 2014. A lot of people are saying, why don't we just frack? We've got lots of hydrocarbons underground here in the UK. Why do you think fracking is so controversial?
Well, I think there are a number of strands to that. I think the first point I would make is that the wholesale, the increase in the wholesale price is a colossal failure in government energy policy. This is a disaster that's been in the making for at least 10 years. I've been in this job trying to persuade the government for 10 years to get on with this, and I've dealt with 10 separate energy ministers in that time frame. And that gives you an indication of, the kind of focus, or rather lack of focus, that's on this.
And lack of gas storage, of course. So when these swings in wholesale prices arrive, which are a function of global supply and geopolitics, if we haven't got lots of gas stored, the UK is more vulnerable buying that gas on what we call the spot market, right?
The UK and Europe, for that matter, both of whom have taken almost a criminally negligent approach to their energy policy. For example, today, the wholesale gas price in the United States is 6 times lower, 6 times lower than it is in the UK.
And they are fracking.
And they are fracking. And they are, because they're effectively self-sufficient in gas. So there is this kind of narrative that there's nothing we can do about this. This is international gas prices. We're at the mercy of the market. That's not the case. If that was the case, the wholesale gas price in the US would be the same, pretty much, bar transportation costs, than the wholesale price here. It's not. It's order of magnitude different. We should be developing our own resources, onshore and offshore.
You talk about onshore and offshore. Offshore, we've got some political leaders in the UK who don't even want us to develop more oil exploration in the North Sea, not least Nicola Sturgeon. But a lot of political leaders, and indeed a lot of the public, opinion polls show, are concerned about onshore, land-based oil and gas drilling using this method of fracking. So I put it to you again, why has it become so controversial? A method that's used across the United States and indeed across many other oil-producing and gas-producing countries across the world?
Well, I think because fundamentally it's been demonised by a well-funded opposition group and associated scare stories. And that's my opinion. As you say, this is not new technology. This has been going on in the United States for at least 20 years. To my knowledge, no one has been seriously injured, much less killed in doing it. But you know, when we were in operation here in Lancashire, every day I'd wake up to stories of water being, you know, polluted or gas coming out of people's taps, all of which are nonsense, but have been repeated so often that they've become urban myths and made it very difficult to operate. Couple that with politicians who haven't had the staying power to stick with it, and we are where we are today.
Now, about 80 miles up the road, north of here, is Cumbria. There's been a public inquiry about opening a coal mine in Cumbria, which many local people want. Again, opinions are mixed. It will bring jobs. It would lower the price of coal here in the UK. It may then lower the price of steel. Lots of knock-on effects. Now, Quadrilla isn't specifically involved in that coal mine, but I think you're lumped together in the same kind of basket, if I may, from a sort of opinion point of view, certainly in the House of Commons, talking to lots of people. And it seems to me, after the COP26 summit in Glasgow, which Britain headed and Boris Johnson banged the drum, the political environment for you, for those who are trying to get that Cumbrian coal mine off the ground, has become even tougher. How sure are you, how optimistic are you that in the end you will get the permissions that you need?
Well, I think politics responds to public opinion. We all know that. And today's announcement that people are going to have to pay, you know, 50% more, £700 on average for their gas.
It's a big increase.
It's a huge increase. And I read somewhere that said it was a once-in-a-lifetime increase. Well, it's not once in a lifetime.
Not
it's
according
twice
to the
in a year.
futures market.
You know?
You look at wholesale gas prices more than I do.
Well, Ofgem will announce another price increase in October.
Yeah.
So it's twice in 6 months, not once in a lifetime. And there is absolutely no guarantee that gas prices are going down. In fact, if Russia invades Ukraine, we're just at the foothills of where the gas price might rise to. So, you know, the public are slowly waking up to the fact that we have prioritised clean energy supply, which is good, but have completely forgotten about the security and affordability of energy supply.
Now, in a former life, I was an oil and gas analyst, believe it or not. I know lots of people in the oil and gas industry, when they talk about renewables, they think, yeah, there's something in renewables. We need to shift towards renewables. We need to shift towards hydrogen, making hydrogen from renewable energy, turning it into green ammonia. All these different ways of weaning ourselves off oil and gas. What would you say about renewables, even though you are clearly somebody who is trying to make a living out of oil and gas?
Well, I've absolutely no issue with renewables. I think, and I agree entirely, we should shift to renewables, but we shouldn't, in the process, you know, throw the baby out of the bathwater, so to speak. You know, even the Climate Change Committee, who have a fairly, you know, aggressive stance in terms of the pace of shift to renewables, say that we will be using natural gas out to 2050 and beyond. Yet we're shutting off all domestic sources of supply. We're in effect exporting our supply to Russia, to Middle East, and we are even importing shale gas from the United States. But at the same time, and we don't you know, account for the CO2 from that in our books, so we can claim we are going CO2 net zero, when actually what we're doing is exporting our supply to somewhere else.
Do you think, despite all the razzmatazz of COP26, given that now the rubber's hitting the road, energy prices are rising, it's a really big political issue, not just for low-income and vulnerable households, but for middle-income households too. The Chancellor unveiling a massive multi-billion-pound support package, lots of which will fall again on consumers. Do you think the political climate may now shift in your direction? You must think you've got a chance, or you wouldn't still be doing, Francis Egan, with all respect, what you're doing.
Well, I think there is every chance that it will, and it should, because gas is part of the answer. And it's a significant part of the answer.
Relatively clean as a hydrocarbon, well, is it, compared to oil or coal?
Exactly. I mean, the European Union have you know, qualified it as renewable.
Yeah.
So there is every incentive for the government to explore and exploit the country's gas reserves. It will create jobs, it will create tax revenue, and it's certainly better for the environment than importing it from Russia or across the Atlantic from America. So we should be doing it.
Are you getting any signals at all from civil servants, from officials, from ministers, even from MPs in the House of Commons, that in the end you might get the permissions you need? Because it's not just about lowering energy prices here in the UK or stopping them from rising even more. It's also about jobs and regional growth, isn't it? Fracking in a part of the UK like this, like Blackpool, like Lancashire, further up the coast in Cumbria, it could really revitalise at least part of the economy.
Absolutely. I mean, Quadrilla on its own spent £300 million in just exploring for shale gas here in Lancashire, and that was just the beginning of the campaign. We were employing 100 people here. We're down to next to nothing now, but 100 people down the road from here, where we sit in Blackpool, which has got one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. So, you know, the opportunities are evident, and I think there are plenty of MPs in the House of Commons who are prepared to support it, and hopefully publicly prepared to support it. I wouldn't claim that there's a majority of MPs, but I think, you know, the announcement today, the Chancellor giving us our own money back to lower the prices, will have a lot of people scratching their heads. Why are we importing gas? Why are we importing shale gas from the United States when we have it beneath our feet here?
So finally, Francis Egan, we're grateful to you for coming in. We do appreciate it. But finally, what is your message to Boris Johnson here and now, post COP26, but also post this Ofgem energy price rise that's going to cause him a big political headache ahead of these May local elections? What can fracking do for him and his political future? What can Quadrilla do for him and his political future?
Well, I think he needs to reverse the moratorium immediately on exploring for shale gas, make it clear that government policy is to support it, and then we'll create jobs, tax revenues and reduced energy costs, all here across the north of England, which is the seats he needs to keep him in power.
Francis Egan, CEO of Quadrilla, my latest Money Talks guest. Very good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Francis Egan there, as ever here on The Money, grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff. And I've put my glasses on because this is the moment when we hear from you. Lots of emails flooding in on this cost of living crisis. It really does feel to me like a moment where, yet again, as always happens in the electoral cycle, in my experience, the economy moves centre stage. Nicola emailed gbviews@gbnews.uk to say raising the energy price cap by so much is disgusting, says Nicola. How are people on benefits going to manage? How are people going to pay back their loans? Alan says, so the government will still get the VAT on the increased bills, even if the loans are made? Good question, Alan. I'll be checking that one out. Biggest con this year, the government is contributing nothing. Wendy says, all power to GB News with its Northwest Spotlight this week. You're welcome, Wendy. Lots of hard work, but we know this is our central mission. I thoroughly enjoyed your Northern Ireland week as well. That's exactly the strength of GB News, and your Northwest reporter is top-notch. Bradley Harris there, munching on fish and chips as we speak. John says the government should be paying for this unpalatable cost of living as they have caused it. They should be opening coal mines and fracking for gas, as this would solve many people's financial problems and take millions of people out of poverty. And we just heard there from the CEO of Quadrilla, a fracking company, here on The Money. And then Keith says, finally, on the money, on the road. I like it. I like it too, Keith. Great that GB News is prepared to broadcast from parts of the UK that most of the London-centric brigade don't even know exist. Well, Keith, like a lot of our viewers, I am a proud Londoner. I can't deny that. But I do think it's really important we get round across the UK, England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales to bring you the news that counts. Because here on GB News, if it matters to you, it matters to us. Now, finally here on The Money, we just heard from David Bentley, fish and chip supremo in these parts, and I'm delighted now to introduce another very well-known local businessman, Chris Higgins. You are the founder, you run the Las Vegas amusement park, arcade machines here on the seafront in Blackpool.
That's correct. And not forgetting the famous, as seen on TV, £1 burger as well.
The £1 burger.
The £1 burger only in Blackpool. But I have got some breaking news which I've been told I'm allowed to tell you now. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit late because Boris is here.
You just met the Prime Minister.
I've just met the Prime Minister. That's why I'm a little bit late.
You know what? This is how it works. Downing Street, the press operation, they saw GB News was coming to Blackpool. They thought those GB News people, they're pretty canny. They got their finger on the pulse. We better go to Blackpool too.
Correct. So I didn't know until last night myself, and then obviously I had to speak to your director.
Yeah.
But unfortunately I had to be a little bit coy about it. So I've just met the Prime Minister, and he's up here obviously talking about the new conference coming to Blackpool, because we've not been here for 15 years, but more importantly talking about the Levelling Up programme, which is obviously on everybody's mind at the moment.
So what do you think, Chris? You're a proud member of the local community here. You've made your business in Blackpool. You're doing your best to increase Blackpool's reputation, return to the iconic seaside resort status that it's had for so many years, reflected in this astonishing world-class hotel, this wonderful Imperial Bar that we're in now. Do you think levelling up, having just talked to the Prime Minister, is more than just a slogan?
Absolutely. Well, the Prime Minister, about to start, his actions there are coming to Blackpool, bringing the conference back to Blackpool. We've been away for 15 years now. It was David Cameron's time.
That's right.
When we was in
the last time the Conservatives had their party conference here in Blackpool.
We weren't even in power at the time. So just bringing that here straight away up to the status, it brings all the media coverages, and it shows that we're a world-class resort. Because what's happening, unfortunately, for years, there's been no investment in the infrastructure. For decades and decades, the investment in the infrastructure has gone down. But as late, the government have been throwing a lot of money at Blackpool, which has allowed them to give all the conference facilities, the hotels and the basic infrastructure that we need in Blackpool. So this is just building on the foundations that the government have already started. So I think it's a fantastic idea.
Now, just before you and I go off air and walk arm in arm along the seafront and grab one of your £1 burgers, as I also get some fish and chips from David Bentley. Let me ask you this. To what extent do you think the media now gets it when it comes to levelling up? To what extent do you think these slogans that we're hearing are going to translate, in the end, into genuine help for towns like this, not just in the northwest, but across the UK?
Yeah, the message is getting out there. Obviously, with what's been happening lately, there's a bit of background noise, but levelling up is about a long-term agenda. You're always going to have background noise. This has happened, that's happened, etc., which is going to cloud its judgment. But this is a long-term strategy. This isn't going to happen tomorrow, next week. This is a long-term infrastructure, major broadband.
You can't do it overnight.
Absolutely.
But you've got to start soon.
You've got to start soon. So, yes, we're going to talk about Boris is upset here, he's upset that, but his agenda is pushing it forward. He went on a foundation of levelling the country up.
Let me ask you this. Yesterday we were in Burnley, another proud Lancashire town, which I'm sure you know. I spoke to a very interesting lady called Carol Johnson. She owns the Smithson Caravan Park, and Carol told me that because of the pandemic, because more people were staying at home for holidays, not getting on a plane to go to Marbella or Portugal or whatever, she feels that more people are now going to holiday in the UK as a permanent thing. Of course, if that was true, that would be great for your business of arcades here in Blackpool, for this town as a whole. Do you think it will happen?
That's already happened, because if you look at...
But do you think it will become permanent?
I believe it is. Post-pandemic, Blackpool attracted 19 million visitors.
Yeah.
And in the last year, during the pandemic, we increased it to 21 million visitors.
Wow.
They're facts.
Yeah.
They're out there.
Yeah.
I actually checked up on this before I came here, and we're building on that. Now people have actually had a year away from going abroad and seeing what the fantastic British economy can give to them, and the seaside resort,
it's easier,
and the
less hassle.
Absolutely. Who wants
bucket and spade on the beach.
Absolutely.
£1 burgers.
£1 burgers. You can't beat some traditional family values, and that's what we are. We're a family value resort, and people have started to taste that again now, and I think we're just going to build up on that. And obviously, alongside the levelling up, which is going to be predominantly deprived towns and seaside resorts, that's also going to help as well. So I can see a really good future for Blackpool and the tourist economy.
Finally, Chris, I have to ask you, there's a bit of a political question. A lot of the media down in Westminster, they're still talking a lot about Downing Street drinks parties, the Prime Minister's birthday cake and all the rest of it. These are important issues. They've obviously upset a lot of people who sacrificed during lockdown, not going to funerals, postponing weddings, not seeing dying relatives and all the rest of it. To what extent do you think those issues really land in a place like Blackpool locally, or to what extent do you think people are more focused on the cost of living?
OK, well, I'm actually feet on the ground because obviously I'm a Conservative member, so I go out with Scott, who's our local MP, and the rest of the South Shore team, and we actually go around knocking doors and we talk to people. So most people, yes, they're a little bit annoyed and all this lot, but a lot of it is media hype. They believe in Boris. Now, Blackpool is a town that predominantly voted for Brexit to leave the European Union. Now, that's a biggie. Now, Boris delivered Brexit when everybody said that he would have delivered Brexit. Boris delivered the best vaccination programme in the whole of the Europe, which people said he would never do. So Boris is doing his job. He's doing the daytime job. There's always going to be background noise. If you look since the beginning of the NHS, which was in the 40s at some point, every year it's in newspapers, the NHS is in crisis, the NHS is in crisis. Every year there's background noise. Boris has looked to turn that tide and to look for the future.
Chris, you are a Conservative member. You are also a distinguished local businessman, inventor of the £1 burger. Thank you so much for coming in. I guess we'll see what happens in the local elections in May. So that was On the Money from the Imperial Bar here in Blackpool, the iconic Lancashire seaside resort. The latest instalment of GB News North West Week. Thanks so much for joining me today. Darren McCaffrey's here in this hot seat at 3 p.m. for the briefing. Nigel Farage from this bar at 7 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello again. A mild one again today, but things are changing. Tomorrow's going to be an awful lot colder, and that colder weather will arrive after a wet and windy spell tonight. It's all coming from a cold front, which is approaching at the moment and will later today bring some heavy rain to the Western Isles and the Highlands of Scotland. But for most of us, it's another dry day. There's a lot of cloud around, but we are seeing some breaks in the clouds, so a bit of sunshine likely, parts of East Wales, the Midlands, North East England, Eastern Scotland seeing some breaks in the cloud, and even further south we may at times see a little blue sky. But generally cloudy, dry and mild with a bit of a breeze blowing. Temperatures double digits, maybe 12, 13 degrees where we see some sunshine. But there's that rain coming into the far northwest later on. Could be quite heavy for a time, and it will start to turn to snow, initially over the mountains. It pushes southwards, that rain band across into northern England, parts of Wales overnight. So an hour or two of rain, and for a short spell at least, that rain could be pretty heavy again, falling as snow over the Welsh mountains. Staying quite mild in the far southeast, but elsewhere it is going to turn colder, so it could turn icy as that band of wet weather moves through. And there is the possibility early tomorrow morning of a bit of snow over the Midlands, East Anglia, possibly parts of southern England, just for a time, not expected to last too long before that sweeps away. And then we've got sunny spells and showers. Those showers will be turning more and more wintry, initially over hills, but